Elise felt like her head just exploded. She stared in shock at John. She never expected him to hit someone else for her. And the person he hit was Troy, the eldest grandson of the Dawsons. Just because she was his wife now?
You are asking for it.
Troy got up from the ground and threw a punch in John's direction. Nobody had ever dared to hit him, and worse still, this was Elise's husband. A useless man who married into the family. His fist had just reached in front of John when John used one hand to grab his fist. John suddenly exerted some strength, and the next thing Troy heard was a loud crack of his wrist.
Ah!
It was broken. Troy howled in pain.
She is my wife. Nobody is to bully her from now on.
John only let go of his hand after saying this. Then he dragged Elise away while she was still completely stunned.
I am going to kill you. I am going to kill you.
Troy held his wrist, the pain nearly killing him. He never expected that the piece of garbage his own family found to be a son-in-law had dared to hit him. Elise was doomed. Her whole family was doomed. Troy quickly ran back into the hotel and couldn't be bothered to treat his injury. Jerome was still in the hall, chatting with some business partners.
Dad! Dad!
Troy dashed over immediately, and Jerome frowned as his conversation was interrupted.
Since your son has things to discuss with you, then we will talk another time.
The guests got up and left. Jerome scowled and snorted.
What a mess. What is it?
Dad, someone beat me.
Troy clenched his teeth.
Look at my hand, it's broken.
Who did this?
Jerome immediately stood up. Even he couldn't bear to hit his own precious son, who dared to be so vicious.
John Crawford.
Troy clenched his teeth hard.
That husband of Elise that married into the family.
They had just given John a new lease of life. Never mind if he wasn't grateful for this, he actually dared to hit Troy. He was just a homeless man, a useless piece of garbage, and he was rebelling. Jerome was furious.
That useless man that married into the family?
According to the information they had, John was homeless and completely hopeless. He even had intermittent bouts of insanity. So perhaps it was his mental illness acting up.
Elise told him to slap me, and he really did.
Jerome frowned.
That guy has some mental illness, and maybe it's suddenly acted up.
He immediately ordered someone to get a doctor for Troy's injury.
Don't provoke crazy people like him. But that Elise actually got John to hit you. Humph. I won't let her off easily.
Dad, chase her out of the family.
This was a good excuse to do so. If Zayden knew about this matter, Elise and family would definitely have to go. Where did they get the guts to hit the eldest grandson of the Dawsons?
Elise is currently in charge of a project and it's at a very important stage now. We are going to sign the contract soon. If we chase her out now, it might affect this project.
Elise was really good at her work. She had taken up several projects in the short time of 2 years. But that was precisely why Jerome and his son were so worried. They were afraid that Elise would be able to gain footing in the company and pose as a threat to them.
Dad, since the project is almost good to go, it doesn't matter who goes to get the contract signed. If I am the one who manages to get these large projects signed, Grandpa would definitely think more highly of me.
Troy viciously continued.
Chase her out. This family of leeches can all go and die.
Meanwhile, John went home with Elise. Elise was still stunned the whole way home. She had never thought that John would hit someone for her. When she had snapped back to reality, she started to worry. John's attack would probably have offended Troy. Knowing that idiot's temper, he would definitely get back at John. Ding dong. She pressed the doorbell, and after some time, Bill opened the door and looked at Elise with eyes filled with guilt.
Elise, you're back.
Bill looked at John behind her and his face fell. But he didn't say anything and just nodded.
Come in.
Do not come in.
John hadn't set a foot in when Mary came dashing out, her face still tear-stained.
Get out. Get out. It's because of you. Elise is going to become the laughingstock of Newark. You have destroyed her. Get out. Now.
Mary was crying as she shouted. She was not willing at all to let John marry into her family. If John was an outstanding man, she might be able to accept it. But then? John was older than Elise by 10 years, no achievements whatsoever, and was homeless. This man was more disgraceful than she could handle. John didn't say anything and turned to leave, but Elise suddenly grabbed his hand.
Mom, let him come in.
If she let John leave now, Troy would surely find someone to kill him. He had hit someone else for her sake, so Elise couldn't just leave him like that.
Elise, he
is now my husband.
Elise bit her lips. The word husband was so strange to her. It seemed to carry needles that stabbed painfully at her heart. Mary's lips trembled as she shook her head in despair.
I am washing my hands of this.
She ran back to her room and slammed the door shut.
Come in.
Elise gently said to him. John nodded and walked into this house that wasn't considered large. The Dawsons were a third-tier wealthy family in Newark. But Elise's house was even smaller than the average.
Come with me.
Elise was afraid that Mary would chase John away again. So she brought him into her own room. The room wasn't large, but it was very neat and tidy.
From now on, you will sleep on the floor, I will sleep on the bed. You live your life and I will live mine, okay?
John didn't say anything and just nodded. He knew that Elise definitely couldn't remember him and definitely couldn't fall in love with him. Perhaps she even hated him, because he had suddenly become her husband. But deep inside, she was still a kind person. She was afraid that Troy would hurt him, so even though it made her uncomfortable, she still wanted him to stay, to protect him. This woman was still so kind even after she had grown up. John started deliberating whether he should take out the sweet wrapper, but after thinking it through, he decided against it. Both of them remained silent and the atmosphere became rather awkward. Suddenly, Elise's phone started ringing. Her face turned white as a sheet.
Elise, from today onwards, you don't have to report to the Dawson group for work anymore.
The phone call was from Troy, and he arrogantly said,
Humph. My dad has fired you. Your family can slowly starve to death.
With that, Troy slammed down the phone. Elise took a long time to react. She had been fired? Because she had asked John to hit Troy? Since she was young, this idiot had bullied her so badly. But he never went through any sort of punishment for it. Elise felt like crying from this unfair treatment. John immediately frowned when he saw this. This Troy, was he seeking death now?